The stars outside the viewport of Commander Rylan Hart's cruiser shimmered like scattered diamonds across an endless velvet canvas. He had seen countless worlds during his service in the Galactic Coalition fleet, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. His ship was docked aboard the colossal flagship of Queen Lyria and her twin sister, Queen Seraphina, the co-rulers of the planet Zitharus. The invitation they extended wasn't one he could refuse, not when it came with the explicit order to marry both of them. Rylan ran a hand through his dark hair, trying to process what had just transpired during their meeting in the Grand Hall. It wasn't every day that two alien queens demanded you become part of their royal family. And yet, here he was, standing in his quarters, staring at his reflection in the polished metal walls as if searching for answers written on his face. Queen Lyria, the elder by mere minutes, radiated authority. Her emerald skin shimmered faintly under the soft glow of the chandeliers, her eyes glinting gold like molten suns. She carried herself with the grace of someone who knew exactly how powerful she was, and wasn't afraid to remind others of it. Beside her stood Queen Seraphina, identical in appearance but entirely different in demeanor. Where Lyria exuded command, Seraphina seemed more playful, almost mischievous, her smile tinged with a hint of mystery. Their voices echoed in his mind. "Commander Hart," Lyria had said, her tone leaving no room for argument, "you will wed us both. Not only me, human, but my sister as well." Seraphina chimed in then, leaning slightly forward with a smirk. "Don't look so shocked, Commander. We've done our research. You're known for your strategic brilliance, your loyalty, and, let's not forget, your charm." She winked, causing Rylan's cheeks to flush despite himself. Now alone in his quarters, Rylan replayed those moments over and over again. How did things escalate so quickly? He had arrived on Zitharus expecting routine diplomatic negotiations, trade agreements, military alliances, the usual bureaucratic nonsense. Instead, he found himself caught in the middle of something far beyond anything he'd ever imagined. The next morning, Rylan entered the palace gardens, where Lyria and Seraphina awaited him. The air smelled sweet, filled with the fragrance of alien flowers whose petals sparkled like tiny jewels. Both queens wore flowing gowns made from iridescent fabric that shifted colors with each movement. They looked otherworldly, ethereal, and utterly unattainable, or so he thought until Seraphina broke into laughter. "You're still wearing that uniform?" she teased, tilting her head. "Surely, we can find something less Earth standard for you." Lyria rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a small smile. "Ignore her, Commander. My sister has always been overly concerned with appearances." "And you haven't?" Seraphina shot back, sticking out her tongue playfully. Rylan cleared his throat, feeling awkward and out of place amidst their banter. "Your Majesties, I must admit, I'm struggling to understand why. Why we chose you." Lyria interrupted, her expression softening. "It's simple. Our people need unity, and you represent something unique, a bridge between humans and Zytherians. Marrying you would strengthen our alliance with Earth while solidifying peace within our own factions." Seraphina stepped closer, resting a hand on his arm. Her touch sent a shiver down his spine. "And besides," she added with a sly grin, "we think you're rather handsome." Before Rylan could respond, a loud crash echoed from somewhere deeper in the garden. All three turned toward the source of the disturbance, where guards rushed past hedges and fountains, shouting orders. A sleek black drone hovered above the chaos, its red lenses scanning the area before firing a concentrated beam of energy at one of the statues. "What is that thing?" Rylan asked, instinctively stepping in front of the queens. "A spy drone," Lyria growled, pulling a slim weapon from beneath her gown. "From the Zorathian Empire. They've been testing our defenses for weeks now." Without hesitation, Rylan drew his plasma pistol and fired at the drone, narrowly missing its core. The machine swerved erratically, retaliating with another blast that forced them to dive behind a marble bench. Seraphina yelped as debris rained down around them, clutching onto Rylan's arm tightly. "This isn't exactly how I envisioned our second date," she quipped, though there was a nervous edge to her voice. "We're not dating yet," Rylan snapped, rolling his eyes even as he aimed another shot at the drone. This time, he hit its propulsion system, sending it spiraling to the ground in a shower of sparks. Lyria approached cautiously, inspecting the wreckage. Impressive marksmanship, Commander. Perhaps marrying you won't be such a mistake after all. Rylan sighed, holstering his weapon. Glad I could impress at least one of you. Later that evening, Rylan found himself seated in a lavish dining hall, surrounded by opulent decor and exotic dishes he couldn't begin to identify. Across the table, Lyria and Serafina exchanged knowing glances, occasionally whispering conspiratorially. Rylan felt like a bug under a microscope, scrutinized and analyzed in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. So, Serafina began, twirling a strand of her silvery hair, tell us about yourself, Commander. What makes Rylan Hart tick? He hesitated, unsure where to start. Well, I grew up on a colony near Proxima Centauri. Joined the fleet right out of training academy. Haven't really had time for much else since then. No romantic entanglements? Lyria pressed, raising an eyebrow. Rylan chuckled nervously. Not really. Most women aren't exactly lining up to date a soldier who spends half his life chasing insurgents across the galaxy. Well, we're not most women, Serafina said, leaning forward with a mischievous gleam in her eyes. And trust me, Commander, we know how to keep a man entertained. Lyria shot her sister a sharp look. Enough, Serafina. Let the poor man eat. As the meal continued, Rylan found himself relaxing slightly, drawn into their easy camaraderie. Despite their regal status, the sisters were surprisingly down-to-earth. Well, as down-to-earth as alien royalty could be. They shared stories of their childhood adventures, their struggles to maintain balance between tradition and progress, and their hopes for Zithara's future. But beneath the surface, Rylan sensed a tension neither queen wanted to acknowledge. Their bond was undeniable, yet there was an underlying rivalry, a subtle competition for dominance. He wondered how long they could sustain such harmony without conflict arising. Days turned into weeks as preparations for the wedding intensified. Rylan struggled to adapt to the customs of Zitharis, which included elaborate rituals and ceremonies designed to test his worthiness as a suitor. From battling holographic beasts in the arena to composing poetry in an ancient dialect, he faced challenges that pushed him to his limits. One particularly grueling trial involved navigating a labyrinth filled with illusions designed to prey on his deepest fears. At one point, he encountered visions of his late parents, urging him to abandon the mission and return home. Another corner revealed scenes of war, reminding him of comrades lost in battle. By the time he emerged victorious, sweat-soaked and trembling, he realized these trials weren't just about proving himself, they were about understanding himself. Throughout it all, Lyria and Serafina remained constant fixtures in his life. Lyria offered guidance and encouragement, helping him decode cryptic riddles and strategize against opponents. Serafina provided levity and distraction, teasing him mercilessly but always ensuring he never took himself too seriously. Yet, as the wedding drew nearer, doubts crept into Rylan's mind. Was he truly ready for this? Could he handle being married to not one, but two queens? More importantly, could he navigate the political minefield that awaited him? One evening, as they strolled along the palace corridors, Rylan finally voiced his concerns. What happens if I fail? If I can't live up to your expectations? Lyria stopped walking, turning to face him with unwavering resolve. Failure isn't an option, Commander. Not for us. Together, we'll create something extraordinary, a legacy that transcends borders and species. Serafina wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his chest. And if you falter, we'll pick you back up. That's what partners do. In that moment, surrounded by their warmth and determination, Rylan felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this absurd arrangement might work. But deep down, he knew the real challenges lay ahead, and they wouldn't come lightly. Unbeknownst to Rylan, forces beyond the palace walls conspired against him. The Zorathian Empire, angered by the prospect of Zitharis aligning with Earth, plotted to sabotage the Union. Agents infiltrated the capital city, spreading propaganda and inciting unrest among the populace. Rumors spread like wildfire, painting Rylan as an outsider unfit to rule alongside the revered queens. Meanwhile, internal dissent brewed within the royal court. Advisors loyal to traditionalist factions whispered warnings of cultural dilution and loss of identity. Even some members of the royal guard questioned whether Lyria and Seraphina's decisions stemmed from genuine affection or reckless ambition. Caught in the crossfire, Rylan found himself torn between defending his honor and protecting the queens he had come to care for deeply. As tensions mounted and threats loomed larger, he realized that love and duty often walked a precarious line, and sometimes sacrifices had to be made. Little did he know, the greatest test of all was yet to come. The morning dawned with an eerie stillness, the kind that made Rylan's instincts flare. He had spent years honing his ability to sense danger, and today it screamed at him like a klaxon. As he stood on the balcony of his quarters, overlooking the sprawling capital city of Zitherus, something felt off. The streets below were unusually quiet, devoid of the usual bustle of citizens going about their day. Even the vibrant hues of the alien flora seemed muted under the pale light of the twin suns. Behind him, the door slid open, and Lyria entered, her emerald skin glowing faintly in the soft sunlight. She carried herself with her usual regal poise, but there was a tension in her shoulders that betrayed her unease. Without a word, she joined him at the railing, her golden eyes scanning the horizon. "They're afraid," she said finally, her voice low and measured. "The people. They don't know what to believe anymore." Rylan turned to face her, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Lyria sighed, her gaze dropping momentarily before meeting his again. "There are whispers spreading through the city, lies planted by those who oppose our union. They say you're not here out of love or loyalty but as a pawn of earth, sent to weaken us from within." She hesitated, then added, "Some even claim you're a spy." Rylan clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. "You know that's not true." "I do," Lyria replied firmly. "But others don't. And fear has a way of twisting truth into something ugly." Before either of them could say more, the comm unit on the wall buzzed urgently. Rylan crossed the room and activated it, revealing the frantic face of one of the palace guards. "Commander Hart. Your presence is required in the throne room immediately." Without waiting for further explanation, Rylan grabbed his weapon and followed Lyria down the winding corridors of the palace. When they arrived, they found Seraphina already there, pacing anxiously while a group of advisors argued heatedly around the central holographic display. The image projected above it showed a massive fleet of ships approaching Zitherus orbit, ships bearing the unmistakable insignia of the Zorathian Empire. Seraphina whirled around as they entered, relief flashing across her features. "Finally. What took you so long?" "Zorathians?" Rylan asked, stepping closer to the display. His jaw tightened as he studied the formation. It was no mere scouting party. This was an invasion force. "They issued an ultimatum," one of the advisors explained, his voice trembling. "They demand we cancel the wedding and sever ties with Earth, or face annihilation." Lyria's expression hardened, her regal composure returning in full force. "We will not bow to threats. Not now, not ever." "But, Your Majesty," another advisor interjected, "their numbers far exceed ours. If they attack." "They won't," Rylan interrupted, his tone sharp and commanding. All eyes turned to him, including the twin queens. "Not if we hit them first." A heavy silence fell over the room. Seraphina raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Go on." Rylan moved to the hologram, pointing to specific clusters of ships. "Their formation suggests they're preparing for a prolonged siege. That means their supply lines are stretched thin. If we launch a precision strike against key targets, we can cripple their logistics before they even reach the surface." "And how exactly do you propose we do that?" Lyria asked, skepticism lacing her words. "With me leading the counterattack," Rylan replied without hesitation. "I'll take a small team of fighters, fast, agile ships capable of slipping past their defenses. We disable their command vessels, scatter their fleet, and buy you time to rally reinforcements." Lyria exchanged a glance with Seraphina, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Turning back to Rylan, Lyria gave him a curt nod. "Very well. But understand this, Commander, failure is not an option." Rylan smirked, though there was no humor in it. Failure isn't really my style, Your Majesty. Hours later, Ryland sat strapped into the cockpit of a sleek Zytherian fighter, its controls unfamiliar but intuitive enough for him to grasp quickly. Around him, a squadron of elite pilots awaited his signal, each one hand-picked by the queens themselves. Through the viewport, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly, dotted with stars, and the ominous shadow of the Zorathian fleet looming ahead. "This is insane," muttered Captain Vela, the lead pilot beside him, her voice crackling over the comms. "We're outnumbered 10-1. That's why we're hitting them where it hurts," Ryland responded, his fingers dancing over the controls as he plotted their course. "Stick to the plan, stay sharp, and trust me. We've got this." Vela grunted in acknowledgement, though her skepticism was palpable. Ryland couldn't blame her. Even he had doubts about whether this harebrained scheme would work. But he'd faced worse odds before, and somehow, he always managed to pull through. Besides, backing down wasn't an option, not when the fate of 2 worlds and 2 queens rested on his shoulders. As they approached the enemy fleet, Ryland initiated the cloaking sequence, rendering their ships invisible to Zorathian sensors. The tension in the cockpit was suffocating, every breath feeling heavier than the last. Then, with a deep inhale, Ryland broke radio silence. "All right, team. Let's show these bastards why messing with Zithris was the worst mistake they ever made." The battle erupted in chaos. Ryland led the charge, weaving through the labyrinth of enemy vessels with precision that bordered on reckless. Plasma bolts streaked past his canopy, narrowly missing as he targeted the first command ship. With a well-placed missile, he disabled its engines, sending it drifting helplessly into the void. Around him, the rest of the squadron executed their roles flawlessly, taking out supply depots and communication arrays with surgical accuracy. For a moment, victory seemed within reach, but then everything went sideways. A sudden barrage of fire erupted from an unexpected quarter, forcing Ryland to swerve violently to avoid being obliterated. His ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring as smoke filled the cockpit. Through gritted teeth, he fought to regain control, his heart pounding like a war drum. "Commander!" Vela's panicked voice crackled over the comms. "Your shields are down. You need to retreat." "No time," Ryland growled, spotting the flagship dead ahead. If he could take it out, the entire fleet would fall into disarray. Ignoring the damage to his own ship, he pushed forward, dodging enemy fire with moves that defied logic. At the last possible second, he unleashed a volley of torpedoes directly into the flagship's core. The explosion was catastrophic, lighting up the darkness of space like a supernova. The shockwave rippled outward, scattering nearby ships and leaving gaping holes in the Zorathian formation. Cheers erupted over the comms as the surviving members of Ryland's squadron regrouped, their spirits buoyed by the unexpected success. But Ryland didn't have time to celebrate. His ship was falling apart, systems failing one by one. With no other choice, he ejected, watching helplessly as his fighter disintegrated behind him. Drifting alone in the cold vacuum of space, he activated his distress beacon, and prayed someone would find him before it was too late. Back on Zithris, news of the victory spread quickly, igniting celebrations throughout the capital. Yet, amidst the jubilation, Lyria and Seraphina remained somber. Despite the triumph, Ryland's fate remained uncertain. Search parties had been dispatched to retrieve him, but hours passed with no sign of the daring commander who had single-handedly turned the tide of the battle. In the royal chambers, Seraphina paced anxiously, her usual playful demeanor replaced by raw worry. "He should have been back by now," she muttered, wringing her hands. "Something's wrong." Lyria stood by the window, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Though she maintained her stoic facade, her eyes betrayed her concern. "We must remain patient. The search teams will find him." "But what if they don't?" Seraphina snapped, her voice cracking slightly. "What if?" "They will," Lyria interrupted firmly. "And when they do, we'll ensure he knows exactly how much he means to us." Seraphina stopped pacing, looking at her sister with wide eyes. "Do you think he realizes it? How much we care for him?" Lyria hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I believe he does. But perhaps, we haven't made it clear enough." Just then, the doors burst open, and a guard rushed in, breathless. "Your Majesties! We've located Commander Hart. He's alive, but injured. Medical teams are bringing him in now." Both queens sprinted toward the infirmary, their hearts racing with a mixture of relief and dread. When they arrived, they found Rylan lying on a gurney, his face pale but conscious. Bruises marred his skin, and bandages covered various wounds, but his trademark smirk was intact. "Took you long enough," he rasped weakly, wincing as he tried to sit up. "Oh, shut up," Serafina scolded, tears streaming down her cheeks as she threw her arms around him. "You idiot! Don't you ever scare us like that again." Lyria knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his cheek. "You've done more than anyone could have asked of you, Commander. Rest now. We'll handle the rest." As Rylan drifted off into unconsciousness, surrounded by the warmth of their presence, he realized something profound. This wasn't just about duty or alliances anymore. Somehow, impossibly, he had found a place where he belonged, a home, and two extraordinary women who had captured his heart in ways he never thought possible. Yet, even as peace settled over Zitherus, Rylan knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Enemies still lurked in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. And within the royal court, tensions simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. But for now, in this fleeting moment of calm, he allowed himself to hope, for love, for unity, and for a future worth fighting for. Little did he know, the greatest challenge of all was yet to come. The days that followed Rylan's recovery were a blur of activity. The victory over the Zorathian fleet had bolstered morale across Zitherus, but it also brought new challenges. The propaganda campaign against him intensified, fueled by factions within the royal court who saw his presence as a threat to tradition. Whispers of dissent grew louder, and protests erupted in the streets, with some citizens calling for the wedding to be cancelled. Lyria and Serafina worked tirelessly to quell the unrest, addressing their people with speeches that emphasized unity and progress. But no matter how eloquent their words or how sincere their intentions, they couldn't silence the voices of fear and prejudice. It was clear that mere rhetoric wouldn't be enough. They needed something more, a gesture so powerful it would leave no room for doubt. Rylan, now fully recovered, joined them in their efforts. He walked among the people of Zitherus, listening to their concerns and sharing stories of his own life on Earth. He spoke not as a conqueror or an outsider, but as someone willing to learn and grow alongside them. Slowly, he began to win hearts, proving through actions rather than words that he was worthy of their trust. But despite these strides, tensions continued to simmer. One evening, as the three sat together in the palace gardens, Lyria voiced what had been weighing heavily on her mind. "We've done all we can," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the shimmering fountain before them. "But unless we take drastic measures, this divide will only deepen." "What do you suggest?" Rylan asked, leaning forward. Serafina exchanged a glance with her sister, then turned to Rylan with a determined glint in her eye. "There's one thing we haven't tried yet, a public ceremony, not just a wedding, but a unification ritual. A chance for our people to witness firsthand the bond we share and see that this union isn't about politics, it's about love." Rylan blinked, taken aback. "A public ceremony? In front of everyone? It's risky," Lyria admitted. "But if we show them the truth, our commitment to each other and to Zitherus, they'll have no choice but to accept us." Rylan hesitated, considering the implications. Such an event would expose them to both celebration and potential hostility. Yet, as he looked at the twin queens, seeing the vulnerability and hope in their eyes, he knew there was no other way. "All right," he said finally. "Let's do it." The day of the ceremony dawned bright and clear, the skies above Zitherus painted in hues of gold and lavender. The grand plaza outside the palace was filled to capacity, with citizens from every corner of the planet gathered to witness history. Banners depicting the intertwined symbols of Earth and Zitherus fluttered in the breeze, and musicians played hauntingly beautiful melodies that echoed off the marble buildings. Rylan stood at the center of the platform, dressed in ceremonial robes adorned with intricate patterns that blended human and Zytherian designs. Beside him, Lyria and Serafina radiated grace and strength, their gowns flowing like liquid starlight. As the officiant, an elder priestess revered throughout the galaxy, began the ancient rites, a hush fell over the crowd. "We gather here today," the the priestess intoned, her voice resonating with power, to witness the joining of two worlds, two hearts, and two souls. Let this union serve as a beacon of hope, a testament to the bonds that transcend borders and differences. As the ritual progressed, Rylan felt a profound shift, not just in himself, but in the atmosphere around him. The skepticism and tension that had hung heavy in the air seemed to dissolve, replaced by a sense of awe and wonder. When the priestess pronounced them united, the cheers that erupted were deafening, a tidal wave of joy and acceptance washing over the plaza. But just as the ceremony reached its climax, a shadow passed overhead. Gasps rippled through the crowd as a lone Zorathian vessel descended into view, its engines roaring ominously. Panic threatened to break out, but Rylan stepped forward, raising his hands to calm the masses. "Stay calm," he shouted, his voice carrying authority. Turning to the ship, he addressed it directly. "Show yourself. Whatever your purpose, know that you face a united people today." For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's hatch opened, and a figure emerged, not an enemy soldier, but a diplomat. He descended slowly, holding up a small device that projected a hologram of the Zorathian Emperor. "Commander Hart," the Emperor's voice boomed. "We underestimated you, and the strength of your alliance. Today, we come not as foes, but as supplicants. We seek peace, not war." A murmur of disbelief swept through the crowd. Rylan exchanged a glance with Lyria and Seraphina, who nodded encouragingly. Stepping forward once more, he replied, "Peace is possible, but only if built on mutual respect and understanding. Will you honor that principle?" The Emperor hesitated, then inclined his head. "We will. Let this day mark the beginning of a new era between our peoples." With that, the Zorathian ship departed, leaving behind a stunned but hopeful audience. Cheers erupted anew, louder and more jubilant than before. For the first time in decades, the specter of conflict faded, replaced by the promise of cooperation and harmony. In the weeks that followed, Zitherus transformed. The wedding became a symbol of unity, celebrated not just on the planet but across the galaxy. Trade routes reopened, cultural exchanges flourished, and alliances strengthened. Rylan, Lyria, and Seraphina worked side by side, governing with wisdom and compassion, earning the love and loyalty of their people. Their personal relationship deepened as well. What began as a political arrangement blossomed into a genuine partnership, rooted in trust, laughter, and shared dreams. Whether navigating the complexities of leadership or simply enjoying quiet moments together in the palace gardens, they found joy in each other's company. One evening, as they strolled beneath the twinkling stars, Rylan paused to look at the twin queens who had changed his life forever. "You know," he said with a grin, "when I signed up for the fleet, I never imagined I'd end up marrying two alien queens." Lyria raised an eyebrow, amused. "And yet, here you are." "Here I am," Rylan agreed, wrapping an arm around each of them. "And honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything." Seraphina laughed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Good answer, Commander." As they stood there, bathed in the soft glow of the twin moons, Rylan realized he had found something rare and precious. A family, a purpose, and a future brighter than any star in the sky. Together, they had faced adversity, defied expectations, and forged a legacy that would endure for generations. And in that moment, surrounded by love and possibility, Rylan Hart knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. As the celebrations faded and life on Zitherus settled into a new rhythm, Rylan found himself reflecting on how far they'd come. The challenges had been immense, but so were the rewards. Each morning, he woke up beside Lyria and Seraphina, their bond stronger than ever, knowing that together they could face anything. One evening, as the three of them stood on the palace balcony overlooking the glowing city, Lyria spoke softly. "Do you remember when we first met? You looked so out of place." Rylan chuckled. "I was out of place, a human commander thrust into alien royalty. But now—" He paused, smiling. "Now it feels like home." "It is your home," Seraphina said, squeezing his hand. "And ours. Together, we've created something extraordinary." The people of Zitherus thrived under their leadership. Trade flourished, arts blossomed, and even former dissenters began to embrace the unity the trio represented. News of their success spread across the galaxy, inspiring other worlds to seek peace over conflict. But beyond politics and diplomacy, it was the small moments that mattered most. Shared laughter over meals, quiet evenings in the garden, and whispered promises under the stars. Rylan marveled at how seamlessly his life intertwined with theirs, despite their differences. "You've changed us too," Lyria admitted one night. "You've taught us to see beyond tradition, to value love and connection above all else." "And you've shown me what true courage looks like," Rylan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I came here thinking I knew everything about duty, but you've shown me what it means to live for something greater." Months later, during a festival celebrating their union, Rylan addressed the crowd. "When I arrived on Zitherus, I didn't expect to find family. But here I stand, with two incredible women who've become my heart and soul. This isn't just my victory, it's ours. Together, we've proven that love transcends boundaries." The cheers echoed through the plaza, a testament to the unity they'd built. As fireworks lit up the sky, Rylan turned to Lyria and Seraphina, pulling them close. "Thank you," he whispered, "for believing in me, for choosing me." Lyria smiled, her golden eyes shimmering. "We chose wisely." Seraphina grinned mischievously. "Obviously." In that moment, surrounded by joy and hope, Rylan realized this wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. With Lyria's strength, Seraphina's wit, and his own unwavering resolve, they would continue to build a future full of possibility. Hand in hand, they stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. For the first time in his life, Rylan Hart felt complete. And as the galaxy watched, it saw not just a union of hearts, but a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the vastness of space, love could conquer all. Together, they had rewritten destiny. And their story was just getting started.